Welcome to the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. Floods are often viewed as natural disasters that destroy homes, roads, and infrastructure. Nonetheless, there are some chemicals associated with floods, and these chemicals are usually released from industries, mining sites, agricultural lands, waste dams, and sometimes from our homes. In today's episode of the Green Transition Show, I have with me Dr. A.K. Mensah to help us find out what these chemicals can pose to the ecosystems and public health, and what governments, communities, and individuals can do to reduce these hidden dangers. Welcome to the show, Doc.
So much for having me.
It's good to have you on the show, and it's been a while. I hope you are doing well.
Yeah, by God's grace, we are hanging in there.
Doc, can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us why you are even interested in issues such as this?
Thank you so much. So I'm Dr. A.K. Mensah. The full name is Albert Mensah. I grew up in the mining area, so because of that, it has really impacted on my career path and my career profession. So I'll start from this way. So I did my secondary education in Pristia, secondary technical school. Then I proceeded to University of Cape Coast in Ghana, where I read agricultural science. Then from there, I went to the University of Kenyatta University in Nairobi, Kenya, where I did my master's in water resources management. Then I proceeded to Ruhr University Bochum in Germany, where I did my PhD. Currently, I work with the CSIR Soil Research Institute as a research scientist. Then I'm also an adjunct lecturer at the University of Mines and Technology in Ghana. Then I also work as a lecturer in research methods and statistics with CSIR College of Science and Technology.
Yeah, we're so proud of you, particularly the work you do. You've done a lot of work in this space, in the mining space, soils, and generally environmental sustainability issues. You and I have also done some work together on small-scale mining, and our work is out there. And people have reached out to me, telling me how our work has impacted on their own work. And so I'm happy to be associated with you, and I'm happy to have you on the Green Transition Show. So let's start. My first question to you will be that, flooding is usually associated with physical destruction, like I said in the introduction. But many people don't realize it also creates chemical hazards. Can you explain how floods become pathways for toxic chemical contamination?
So like you rightly said, Derry, many people associate flooding with destruction of items, destruction of properties, and also the fact that it sort of leads to death and all that. Little do we know about the fact that it can also impact on the release of chemicals. And this is the science. The chemistry is this. You see, the soil is made up of pores, what is called the macropores and the micropores. The macropores are the big pores, the big spaces. Then the micropores are the smaller spaces. Within these big spaces in the soil is what is contained the air. Then within the smaller spaces in the soil, which is what's contained the water. Now, when it floods, the opposite happens. The big spaces that's supposed to contain air it now contains water. Now, that means that that space is devoid of what? Oxygen. It displaces the air. Now, that is where the problem begins. Okay, so it causes something called reduction. So in chemistry, basic chemistry, addition of hydrogen in the form of water is called reduction. Removal of oxygen is called what? Reduction. So that is where the whole science begins. The biochemistry begins. Then now when it happened that way, the chemicals are bound to certain components in the soil. Okay, we can have something called the rock particles, the clay particles. We can have what is called the minerals. We can have carbon in the soil. We can also have what's called oxy or hydroxides. So this component that I've mentioned to you contain these heavy metals, or it contains what is called the chemicals. Okay. Now, when it rains, and those spaces that I've mentioned to you, the macropores is now filled with water instead of air. It changes the chemistry of everything. So now they begin to now displace themselves, and they begin to become available to us in the groundwater, or it begins to become available within the soil space. Okay. So now what happens is that we have why does this thing happen? It happens because the ability for the soil to now hold on some of these chemicals, it actually goes down. Okay, the ability goes down. So for instance, I've mentioned to you what is called oxyhydroxides.
Yeah.
Oxyhydroxides of metals, like iron, like aluminum, like manganese. These three, okay, hold this toxic element. Now it is more stable when the place is not waterlogged. But when the place gets waterlogged, now the chemistry changes. It changes from, let's say, if it's about iron will change from iron 3 to iron 2. Now, when it changes from iron 3 to iron 2, the ability to hold on is no more. It reduces. So now everything held on it also becomes what? Released. So basically that's what happened. Then sometimes it's also bound to clay particles, the clay particles in the soil. Sometimes it's also some of them are also bonded to what is called organic matter. Now, all these components, sometimes they also bonded to rock particles. Sometimes they are bonded to rock, or what is called minerals. So all these things, when the place gets flooded, the chemistry changes. Then now they begin to release all these toxic elements and other chemicals that are sequestered on the surfaces. They become available. And not only what is called toxic element. Okay, we also have pesticides from farms. We have fertilizers from farms. And when you go to petrol stations or the fuel stations also have the hydrocarbons. Then we go to electronic waste dump. Okay, we have issues with lead, issues with other rare earth elements. All of them begin to become available. But the problem here is not even, we have two main kinds, the organic, and some of them are inorganic. Organic ones are like pesticides, like fertilizers, they are organic. Okay, another ones like hydrocarbons from fuel stations, most of them are organic. Now, because for them they'll break down with time, so they'll become more or less like degraded in the space, and the effect can be reduced. The problem here is with the inorganic, the toxic element, heavy metals. Now, heavy metals are not able to break down. So they can sit in the soil or in the groundwater, in the sediment for a very long period of time, and they'll be casting their repercussions on human health as time progresses.
Okay. If you are watching us, this is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. My guest is Dr. A.K. Mensah. He's a research fellow or research scientist with CSIRs. If you are new to the channel on YouTube, kindly hit the subscribe button to motivate us to continue to bring you insightful conversations. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on TikTok. There are also products associated with our videos. So if you click on any of our videos, you see various products from various shops that you can buy at discounted prices. We are live on Facebook. Doc, you've taken us through the chemical composition and how, when it rains or when there are floods, these flood waters carry these chemicals, and that may affect our human health. And these chemicals may affect our human health, particularly if we consume the water. Now, can you elaborate more on how these chemicals affect human health in both the short term and long term?
If this these chemicals that we're talking about, if they don't affect our human health, then it means we shouldn't talk about them. Now, when you read Agenda 21, the sustainability blueprint for 21st century, it spells out 27 principles. One of the number one principle in those 27 principles is that the number one principle is that human beings are at the center of every developmental project. So without the impact these chemicals are going to cause, then we are better off. We should be okay. But then, because they are linked to our health, that's why we must talk about them. Now, how do these chemicals get linked to our health? Let's talk about, I've told you that the problem now is the heavy metal, toxic element, because they do not break down, so they sit in there for a very long period of time. How do they impact on our health? Let's talk about only arsenic, even arsenic alone. Arsenic alone is identified as among the top 10 elements identified by International Agency for Research on Cancer. Top 10 element, one of the top 10 elements for causing cancer. That is for only arsenic. Now, arsenic itself, there are research that is trying so hard to link arsenic to Buruli ulcer. And even though the research is not emphatic that arsenic causes Buruli ulcer, but there's a linkage, interestingly, where there are higher concentrations of arsenic recorded. Those areas are concomitantly found to be the hotspot of Buruli ulcer. Okay, so we are trying to see, and some scientists are saying that the arsenic may provide a fertile ground for the growth of the bacteria responsible for causing the Buruli ulcer. Now, we have done some research. I'm doing some work with CSIR in Kumasi.
Yeah.
For CSIR, what we are doing is that, together with other professors like Dr. Lugulo, Nancy Akam, and others, what we are doing is that we have collected over 36 years since 1990. Since 1990, papers that have done works on arsenic and papers that have done works on Buruli ulcer. Then we are trying to match those papers that mention Buruli ulcer if they concomitantly also mention what? Arsenic, so that you can now find the link. Now, I must tell you that in places like Amancia Central, Amancia West, these are the hotspot of Galamsey. These are hotspot of what is called illegal mining. Many Ghanaians put it that way. You know why I'm being skeptical about that. So those areas like Amancia West, Amancia Central, those areas are noted for Galamsey. They are noted for illegal mining. Those areas are also the hotspot of Buruli ulcer. Interestingly, those areas are the hotspot also arsenic, mercury. Okay, so if you do the correlation, you find that you can have like 0.8. Okay, the coefficient of variation or the coefficient of correlation is like 0.8, which means that there's a high correlation between the mentions of studies of arsenic at the same time those ones with Buruli ulcer. So that means they can be linkage, right?
Yes.
And you know that Buruli ulcer is one of the non-tropical diseases. Then what is called the neglected tropical diseases. Buruli ulcer.
Yeah.
So those are some of the human health risks associated with these issues of heavy metals. Then we have issues like mercury, which is linked to cognitive malfunction in children, which is linked to nervous breakdown. Okay, we have issues like copper, which is linked to wasting disease. Wasting disease is also it's hereditary and it's like Parkinsonism. So these are some of the relationship between diseases and environment. What is called non-communicable diseases. So diseases are not only caused by bacteria, they are not only caused by living organisms, but they can also be caused by polluted environment. And those people who are into malaria research will tell you how malaria parasite even came about. It came from a marshy area, and the marshy area is more or less like a waterlogged area. Okay, so there are some linkages between this heavy metals and also our human health.
What happens to rivers, wetlands, groundwater, wildlife, and agricultural lands after floodwaters spread these contaminants? You're muted. We cannot hear you, Dr. A.K. Mensah. This is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. Our guest is Dr. A.K. Mensah. He's a research scientist with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in Ghana. So we are discussing flood. You are muted, Doc.
Yeah, please. Sorry, there was some interference from my kid here. So, like I was saying, you know, the ecological system is networked. They are interconnected. The water, the soil, the ecosystem, okay, the groundwater, the surface water, all of them are interconnected. They are linked. The wetlands, the floodplains, okay, they are linked, and each plays their role, you know. But interestingly, one will be playing its role, then human beings, because of our greed and of our insatiable needs to satisfy our needs, we will go and we will build on floodplains, we'll build on wetlands. Okay. Now, when it's happening that way, the function of a wetland is to help us purify this toxic element so that they don't get into the environment and harm us. Likewise, the function of a floodplain. Okay, so all this what is called ecological systems have their roles to play. But for us, we will go and build on waterways. But when you build on waterways, you have actually sort of blocked the way the water is supposed to flow. So these things actually impair on the political functions. You know, wetlands, there are even wetlands that are called constructed wetlands, where they are constructed artificially in order to sort of purify this toxic element in our environment by the mining companies and all that. You know, so they have a role to play. But where flooding happens, then it means that it becomes catastrophic. You know, their roles and their functions are impaired. And at the end of the day, the implications and the impact are given to us humans, and we bear the brunt of it.
Can ecosystems naturally recover, or do some of these chemicals persist for years or decades?
When it comes to ecosystem recovery, it will depend. It will depend on whether the contamination at the place is young, or whether the contamination at the place is old. Now, for when the area is left to sort of like if the contaminated area is left for a very long time, okay, then recovery becomes difficult. Unlike for younger sites. How does this happen? You know, when the area is old, what happens is that the primary minerals in the soil or in the water begins to now react, undergo weathering and undergo oxidation. Then they become more or less secondary minerals. Now, secondary minerals are now difficult to become available. Then another point is that when the area is left to age, okay, most of the elements there that are available become non-available. So it means that you do remediation in order to get them so that you can get those elements out. But the thing is that it's not even available for you to get it out. You know, so when the area is left to abandoned for a long period of time, what is called the toxic element begins to migrate into forms that are now becoming non-available. So it becomes very difficult for us to recover. So for us to recover, it will depend on the area, whether the area is aged or is young. The younger, the easier for us to repair. And when the older, the more difficult it is for us to repair.
This is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. My guest is Dr. A.K. Mensah, a research scientist with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in Ghana. If you are watching us for the first time, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button on YouTube to motivate us to continue to bring you insightful conversations. We are live on Facebook, so you can also follow us on Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn. Doc, climate change is increasing both the frequency and intensity of flooding in many parts of the world, and Ghana is no exception. We've seen the recent floods in Accra that have devastated many lives and properties across the capital. How is climate change amplifying chemical pollution risks?
So climate change, increases the intensity of rain and also the frequency at which the rain can fall. Now the intensity and the intensity, the volume and the frequency, all these things can exacerbate flooding. Now, like I've told you, when issues like flooding happens, the pore spaces are sort of filled. Those ones that are macropores, those ones that are supposed to contain air, now contain what? Water. Now when it's happening that way, then that is where the chemistry begins. Now, let me bring you back again. Now, when the area gets flooded with more water and the place is contaminated, the chemistry changes in terms of pH. The chemistry changes in terms of what is called redox potential. It changes in terms of the carbon content. The chemistry changes also in terms of the cation exchange capacity. The chemistry changes in terms of so many variables. Now, let me give you one example. Climate change can increase the frequency with which flooding happens. It increases the volume of water supply and can also now, then what happens is that it is now going to change the biogeochemistry of the site. For instance, when the area gets flooded, we can have the pH going high. So we say that there's more hydrolysis. Now, because there's more hydrolysis, when the pH goes high, it means that all those elements that are in the soil that have their what is it? I'm trying to communicate in such a way that everybody will understand, but sometimes it's difficult. Let me say there are let's say two types of cations, or two types of what is called heavy metals, positive and negative. For the positive ones, when the pH goes high, their release become suppressed. Now, for the negative ones, when the pH goes high, their release become enhanced. You get my point?
Yes.
So when the area gets more flooded, pH goes up because you realize that the proton, which is the hydrogen, is consumed. Now, because proton is consumed in the process of what is called hydrolysis. So you have more of hydroxyl ions, which is more or less like negative ions. These negative ions will now cause those anions that are in the soil to become more released. Then the opposite also happens. Okay, so flooding causes all these things, and these are all associated with climate change regimes. Now, let me give you an example of a study that was done by one man called Mensah, 2017. He was looking at what is it called? Flooding caused by climate change in the US. Then he found out that in those areas that are more impacted with climate change, we have issues with mobilization of arsenic. That is arsenic 3. Okay, so we have like some species of element. This species of element will now cause the effect to be more. One species of the element is, let's say, arsenic 5 and arsenic 3. Arsenic 3 is more toxic than arsenic 5. So in areas where there's more flooding, we cause more of arsenic 3 to be dominant in our food chain, in our water bodies, and the effect is become high. Now we have another one like chromium 6 and chromium 5. So when climate change happens and there's dry spells, we have more dominant of chromium 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so chromium 6 will become more dominant, and now that will cause ramifications to be read on humans. So those are some of the ramifications of climate change on especially influencing the species of the element in question.
Okay. In many developing countries, informal settlements and artisanal small-scale mining communities are especially more vulnerable to flooding. What unique environmental and health risks do these communities face?
Okay, so like I already said, contamination will depend on the site. Okay, it will depend on the parent material at the site. It will depend on the land use at the site. Okay, for instance, when you go to mining areas have more of areas that are abandoned, mining sites that are polluted but abandoned.
Yeah.
We have more tailings that are also left unprotected. We have more of mining sites, stockpiling materials that are also there. We have more also tailings that are sort of produced by small scale mining. They don't put any fence or any sort of protection to safeguard the environment. Now, so when you go to mining areas, you expect that they become more vulnerable, because the structures there sort of will cause the pollution to become more available. For instance, if the area is polluted with, let's say, more or less like tailings. Tailings are the dams that are constructed to store effluent from the mining companies or for the processing plant. Now, these tailings, most often they are abandoned. When you see children play on those sites, okay, use this as playground. Women also use the site as what? Their place to go to the farm. Now, when these sites are sort of exposed, okay, it causes something called what is called wet deposition during flooding. So it will carry the toxic element from one end and it go and deposit at another place. So that it means that the health impact what heightens. Then when the place is also dry, it causes what we call dry deposition, where the wind will sort of take up the toxic element and will be deposited there over time. Now all these things become more heightened when it rains and when the place becomes flooded. You realize that this site that I've mentioned, the tailings, the abandoned mining site, the stockpile fields, the Galamsey areas that are also not protected, the tailings dam, okay, all these sites are now going to carry toxic elements into the groundwater, into the available water, into the food chain, and also into the ecosystem and even the surface water. So it means that when you live in such areas, you are more prone to the problem than people who are sort of a distance away. And there are research that have shown some of this that I'm talking about.
Okay. So using the recent flooding in Ghana as an example, what would you propose to the government of Ghana to identify, or what monitoring systems will you propose to the government of Ghana to identify chemical contamination before it becomes a public health concern?
One, after flooding, we have to move towards soil testing. We have to test the boreholes, the water bodies in the area before we begin to use them again. Okay. The other thing is that we have to also invest into what is called geoengineering. Okay. Now, this geoengineering, you see, what happens is that you see many of these mining sites, many of these flooded areas, if you go to Accra, you don't even see vegetation.
Yeah.
You don't even see vegetation. But these are the holders. They are the holders of the chemicals. So when they are not available, then it means that there's nothing to hold the chemicals in place, and there's nothing to stop them, so the chemicals will become available. Okay, but when the site is polluted, there are engineering strategies that we can take so that at least when it rains or when the place gets flooded, the toxic element will not become more mobile. Mm-hmm. There are some strategies you can take. Permit me to share my screen and take you through one solution that I want us to take a look at.
Yes.
That I think we can prioritize. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I have to share my screen.
Yes. I think you have permission to do so.
Okay.
And I don't think the government of Ghana is doing that. Do you think the government of Ghana is doing what you are proposing, testing the soils and all of that?
Yeah, Ghana, we don't invest in research, so sometimes it becomes very difficult to some of these things. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I call geoengineering. Okay, geoengineering. So what is geoengineering? geoengineering here, I mean, it's a deliberate application of engineering and scientific techniques to modify environmental systems in order to solve large-scale environmental challenges. Here, it involves designing and implementing solutions, soil amendment, phytoremediation, engineered wetlands, and land reclamation. So we take a look at soil amendment. We combine it with phytoremediation using plant. Then we also can get wetlands and systems that can help in land reclamation. Now, this is where the concept came from. The concept came from the ability of plant to sequester, ability of plant to what? To filter, ability of plant to clean. So when you plant a city and you tend to leave the plant out, then the function is altered. So by all means, you're going to get bitten. Okay? Because there's a role plants should play. We human beings cannot come and occupy spaces that plants are supposed to occupy. Then we just occupy, then we are just destroying. It will bite at us. So what happens is that in geoengineering, it's based on this concept, where you can see abandoned mining site.
Yeah.
Let me use my.
Yeah, I can see abandoned mine.
You can see abandoned mining site.
Yes.
Okay, so the site we can plant species over there. Okay, so that when it rains, this abandoned mining site can also be used as maybe other examples, like maybe a petrol station, okay, a fuel station, for instance, or any other contaminated site. Okay, we can plant species over there. Can plant any vegetation. Then when we plant the vegetation, we can combine it with what compost. Can combine it with compost or biochar or manure. Now, biochar is like charcoal. What biochar does is that it is the difference between biochar and manure is that biochar is sort of it is a material that has been charred, a material that has been burnt. Now, when you burn it, what happens is that you increase the carbon. The science is that you increase carbon. Why do you increase the carbon? You increase the carbon because the carbon is a sequester. The carbon is a carrier. The carbon is an absorber. So instead of the toxic element to get into the groundwater, the carbon will fix it. Now, it doesn't just fix it. We say that it is recalcitrant. It is recalcitrant because it means that it is very stubborn. When it catches you, you cannot take yourself out. You understand? So that means that when the carbon fixes the toxic element, it means the toxic element cannot get its way out. So that's why we do the biochar. We do the biochar so that the carbon will become recalcitrant, so that it can sequester and can stabilize those toxic elements. So when it rains, before the rains get it out from the places where it is locked, it is not easy. You can't get it out. Okay, so that is the science of the biochar, blending it with the plant. The plant is also has the ability to absorb. It has the ability to stabilize on the root. It can stabilize the toxic element on the root. It can also absorb the toxic element into its stem. So with these combinations of the soil amendment, like biochar doing its part, the plant also doing its part, we are geoengineering the community, and that when it floods the place, we don't have problem with what toxic element getting exposed and getting released into our food and into our water bodies and the others.
Okay. So I mean, okay, go ahead, please.
So this is what happens. So we have to green every area. We have to green every area like I wanted to use a pointer, but I don't know. You have to green every area like okay. The pointer, just a minute. Okay. Okay. What is highlighter? I got it.
So you've once you search for what you're looking for, you've given us the technical approach to dealing with the problem. But in your view, what practical steps can households and communities take immediately after flooding to reduce the exposure to harmful chemicals? Just right after flooding, what can households and communities do? Very practical steps. If you can share with us very practical steps.
Let me just finish with this one, then I can come to that. Okay. Just a minute. So, like I was saying, so this one we can see from waste. You see, industrial discharge. We can see land and e-waste site. You can see fuel and oil spills. You can see agriculture runoff. Okay, we can see all these areas must be vegetated. Okay, now when we vegetate all these places, then what happens is that we are going to have holders. Okay, and these holders will, instead of these chemicals to become available, they will be stabilized on the floor, they will be stabilized on the ground, and that they will not become available for pollution. And at the end of the day, our human health will be protected. So these are some of the case studies that it has happened. I did some study in Obuasi, where I used in Obuasi and Amanse Central, where I use heavy metal. I use biochar. I flooded the place and I used biochar to sort of see how biochar will sequester and reduce the release of mercury, arsenic, and lead and cadmium. And it was found that mercury, arsenic, and lead, they were more reduced. Their release became reduced with the use of biochar and also with the use of compost. So some of these things can be used. Then there's other plants like vetiver grass, mucuna, and even fern. Fern grows under oil palm. Okay, some of these plants cannot be. See, we cannot always plant for food. We can plant for the environment. Okay, they can also be planted at our farms so that when it rains, we don't have the issues with mobilization or the release of the toxic element into our food chain, into our groundwater, into our surface water, and yeah.
This is the Green Transition Show with me, Dr. Francis Tuokuu. My guest is Dr. A.K. Mensah. A.K., you, like I said earlier, you've given us the technical approach to dealing with the problem. But what practical steps can households and communities, not the governments, households and communities take immediately after flooding to reduce their exposure to harmful chemicals?
So I think one of the ways that they can do is to not to be in hurry to use the things that the area. Okay, there should be tests. Like I said, there should be tests of the water bodies. We should test the soils. We should test the food. Okay, we should test all these things so that we can be rest assured that this is what we are taking into our system. Yeah. Then the other thing that we can also do is to also increase some of this public education that I'm doing over here. Okay, so that we see that there are other chemicals also that are associated with floodwaters, and that when the place gets flooded and we come back, we don't just come back and life just bounces back. It may take time, and so we should take also in charge of some of these things. Then the other thing we can also do is to also invest into what I call issues like especially when it comes to research and especially research. Okay, research, and we should also be able to trust in areas like those public officials, like the environmental health and those they call them town council. Okay, they should move to areas that have been flooded. Even the shirt that we wear, it's not that, and the mattress that we even use after flooding, we must exercise some discretion and hold on, do all these tests and make sure that we are rest assured of their sane or of their sanity before we can move on to use them. Yeah. Especially when it comes to the water, the soil, and the food. These are very critical. Yeah, we should always test them before.
All right. Looking ahead, what policies, investments, and innovations are needed to ensure flood resilience also includes protection against chemical pollution and environmental health risks?
So, for instance, when it comes to, let's say, areas that are polluted like mining, we must ensure that we move swift to what is called concurrent rehabilitation. Okay, we don't finish mining before we do rehabilitation, but rehabilitation can be woven into the mine project life cycle from the very beginning to the very end, and that you reclaim as you mine. In that case, we reduce the extent of pollution should any flooding does take place or should any rainfall regimes happen. So concurrent rehabilitation is key. Then the other thing is that we must also ensure that we give enough funding to support scientific research. Okay, we should establish laboratories that are robust enough, that are able to carry out robust environmental sampling here. So investment to scientific research is also very key. We should also not forget about the fact that we should invest into something, a robust town and country planning. Okay, wetlands should be maintained as wetlands. Floodplains should be maintained as floodplains. Okay.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is also strict enforcement of the law is very important. We don't need new laws. What we need is just the enforcement of the existing laws. Okay. Then the other thing is also to respect regulatory enactment. Okay. So all these things come together. I think we'll be able to reduce the effect that flooding has in terms of releasing chemicals into our ecosystem.
Doc, what are your concluding words?
My concluding words is that flooding should not only be treated as a public hazard or from let's say it shouldn't be treated only as a hazard, but also should be treated also as a biochemistry problem. Okay. Now, when we treat flooding not only as a public hazard and the fact that it destroys our environment, it destroys items and kills people, but when we deal with it also as a biochemistry problem, in that case, then we institute in place measures to also arrest the toxic elements that are released, the fuel, the petrol, the hydrocarbons, the toxic element, okay, the contaminated water and all that. When we treat flooding as a biochemistry problem, we will institute in place measures to arrest all these things so that at the end of the day, when the place gets flooded, we can still bounce back into life and eat our food the way we want to eat it. We can still bath the water the way we want to bath it. We can still drink it the way we want to drink it. You know, but until that is done, then I think that we should also try and be good citizens. Being good, you see, a society is not run by just scientists or experts. A society is run by good men
and women.
Good men. Okay, we should be good people. We should be good men and women.
Yeah.
And that everything that's happening around us will go in cycle. If you don't treat one right, it will come back to bite us.
Good. Thank you so much, Doc, for being on the show. We are so privileged to have you on the show. We appreciate your insights. Viewers, this is where we draw the curtain to a close. We thank you for participating in the show, for watching or for listening. We hope to see you again next time. If you are new to the channel on YouTube, kindly hit the subscribe button to motivate us to continue to bring you such insightful conversations. You can also follow us on Facebook, TikTok, and on LinkedIn. There are also products associated with our videos. So if you click on any of our videos, you see various products in various shops that you can click on and buy at discounted prices. We hope to see you again next time. Thank you so much once again, Doc, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure joining you. Thank you. Sorry for